All right, we're back with the morning crossfire right here on 99.3 Nigerian Folk. Today, we have a very interesting conversation, and of course, we'd like you to be a part of it. We're looking at the role of corporate governance in national development. When we talk about corporate governance, we'll get to know exactly what corporate governance is, but I'm sure not a few of you out there already have an idea of what corporate governance entails. Our guest this morning to do justice to this topic is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria. He is Mr. Dele Alimi. The Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria promotes good corporate governance in Nigeria, empowering those who are charged with governance duties to effectively and legally discharge those duties. They promote good governance, good corporate governance in Nigeria by empowering those who are charged with governance duties to effectively and legally discharge these duties. It's just that's all we have on the top of our head. But I guess to tell us exactly more about this organization and, of course, his views on corporate governance in Nigeria. The Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria itself is a not-for-profit membership organization which enjoys the support of key market core institutions, namely the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the NSE, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, the FRC, and the Corporate Affairs Commission, CSC, as well as international multilateral organizations such as the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, that's of the World Bank. Good morning to you, Mr. Bamdela Alimi. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, and really, I'm happy to be here.
All right, fantastic.
Good morning.
Fantastic. If you could, yes, fantastic. Would tilt your camera. That's better. That's better. Nice to have you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Interesting. For those who are wondering what corporate governance is about, we're going to go to the classroom a little bit this morning. What is corporate governance?
Thank you very much. Corporate governance literally means the act of proper running and management of organization. That is the literary meaning. It talks about how organization should be governed, how organization should be run, set the rules, processes, procedures to run organization in first say maybe in a profitable way, two, in a sustainable way, and three, in a way that all stakeholders involved in the organization. And when we say all stakeholders now, we are not just talking about the owners of the organization. We are talking about staff, we're talking about government, we're talking about the environment, the external environment as a whole, that all stakeholders benefit from the running of that organization, such that whatever the organization is doing to make profit does not impact negatively on any of the stakeholders. The process, the rules that governs that is what is called corporate governance.
All right, very interesting. So looking at how organizations are run in a profitable, sustainable manner as well. So it's not just about making profits, but also about how everybody in the organization is carried along. Can you, yes, what is the state? So are we looking at the private sector only here, or is the public sector a part of what corporate governance looks at or covers?
Yeah, initially, the worry was about the private sector. And the worry can be understood from the fact that people are committing their hard-earned money to invest in organizations. And government felt it is important that those investments should be protected. And that's why you have regulators whose roles are to ensure that those organizations are run in a way that protects the investment of everyone involved. But today, over the last 2 decades or thereabouts, it has extended even into the public sector, where we realize that it's not just about running organizations, private organizations profitably. If the public sector, for example, the regulators, government itself, if monetary policies or fiscal policies are not properly put in place and properly managed has an effect on how the organization itself is profitable. So at the end of the day, you realize that when we talk corporate governance today, we are not just talking about the public sector, the private sector. We are also involving the public sector.
Interesting. I know you've touched on it, just now, but I want you to just briefly again highlight what is the difference between corporate governance in the public sector and corporate governance in the private sector.
Yeah, I think the major difference that I would say, in public sector, of course, are not profit, and they are looking at the larger interests of the society. While you may say for the corporate organizations, the first self-interest is running the organization profitably, and every other thing evolves from that. So the difference basically is that you are looking at a wider public in terms of who the audience are. You are also looking at the interest of the various organizations. That can be also a little different. And then, of course, we talk about the purpose and the target of governance at these sectors, and in terms of private and public, they're a little different. So, and of course, also operations. The procedures and operation in the public sector is quite different. And when I say quite different, of course, we know that the government, the public sectors have a set of rules and procedures that guides the way public properties and public entities are governed. So to get a hang of the two, you cannot just say there is one set of rules about corporate governance. Yes, you could say in terms of principles, the principles are similar, but the rules are different. And that is why in Nigeria today, while we have a code of corporate governance that guides the private sector, the one for the public sector, which is also needed now, is just being developed, because it just has to be something different.
Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I am taking my notes here. I know our listeners are taking theirs too. What is your assessment of the state of corporate governance in both the private and public sectors in Nigeria today?
Thank you very much. I was actually expecting that question. And yes, I think we've come a long way. I always tell people, you see, it depends on how you see the glass, whether it's half empty or half filled. But I think when you look at where we were and where we are now, we've come a very, very long way. Kofi, you remember, this is a country where so many banks failed, and the failures were attributed, almost all of them, to bad corporate governance. And I think since then, government, the CBN, who is the major regulator, and other regulatory authorities have kind of stepped up their games. And we have had very good actions taken in that area. Since then, since 2018, we have had our National Code of Corporate Governance. We are one of the very few in Africa. Our Code of Corporate Governance is regarded as one of the best in the world. We are not perfect yet. We are not there yet. We still have infractions there and there. But let me say this, even in climes that started corporate governance centuries ago, we still have some terrible infractions. Even as close by as last year, we had serious infractions in the United States of America, where basically corporate governance started. So we call it a marathon. We always call corporate governance a marathon. It's not a sprint. You run it for quite a while, and it's dynamic. It continues to change. The rules continue to change because people have a way of finding loopholes around the rules, and regulatory authorities will continue to also up their game, become more dynamic and change. But I think Nigeria is doing well. Are we doing as good as we should be doing? Not yet. But I think when you compare with where we're coming from, we have come a long way.
Quite interesting. We've come a long way. We know where we used to be. If you're listening to us this morning on the Morning Crossfire, 99.3 Nigeria Info, our guest is a big fish, if he would allow me call me that. He's Mr. Dele Alimi. He's the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria. All right. do we put a chartered? Because usually I'm used to seeing institute of directors, but I'm sure
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
wrong to
It's now charter.
chartered. Fantastic.
Yes, it's now charter. Yes,
Fantastic,
yes.
fantastic. And of course, we're looking at the role of corporate governance, which is the business of the institute is to make sure that they entrench the corporate governance culture in Nigeria and build that environment as well. And of course, we're talking this morning about the role of corporate governance in national development. We're looking at driving Nigeria's economic transformation and diversification. What role can corporate governance play? And your thoughts are welcome. If you want to call through 0700 993 993 is the studio line. You can do that right now. 0700 993 993. We also have 01 465 71904. Female listeners, if you can't get through that line, for the female listeners, you can call 01 465 7190, as well as WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Always streaming live. You can watch us live on YouTube and on Facebook. Simply search for Nigeria Info FM. Mr. Alimi, what role can corporate governance play in driving national development, in driving Nigeria's economic transformation and diversification? Because you've talked to us about, I'm hearing in my head, I'm hearing structure, I'm hearing rules, I'm hearing ethics, integrity, and yes, and all that, from a layman's point, you understanding. But so, what role can corporate governance play in getting Nigeria to become the nation that it has the potential to be?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, if you look at what corporate governance means, which is like doing the right thing all the time, taking the right decisions all the time, going by the rules all the time. That in itself portends that we are going to be running organizations ethically. We're going to be running organizations with a lot of integrity. We're not going to be running organizations with emotions. We are not going to be running organizations. Of course, it doesn't mean that these are human beings, so you can't say everything is going to be sans emotion. But be that as it may, the way corporate governance helps the growth of the economy is because it's the oil that runs in the machinery of a virile private sector, a very virile private sector. And when the private sector, it has come to the fore that most of the things today that are being provided by government in a climate like ours is supposed to be from the private sector. Whether you talk about jobs, we talk about economic development in terms of the provision of funds within the economy, of capital movement, banking, everything. It's the private sector. Expectation from the government is to provide a very good business environment. So the private sector is expected to run the country in a very smooth and variable way. So when we have that, whether we like it or not, there's going to be growth. There's going to be employment. We're going to have a viral economy because money is moving around. Organizations are not falling off. They are not dying off. Organizations are sustainable. The environment is well taken care of. Ethical standard is taken into consideration in everything we do. So when you look at the combination of all these things, there is a way it helps a country to grow. So for me, I think it is the oil that ensures that a nation grows. And when you talk about foreign direct investment into any nation, foreign direct investment search for a place where corporate governance is properly entrenched. That is the first thing they look at.
All right.
First, they look at the country. They look at the country, see the set of rules, see how organizations are run. Then second, they look at the various organizations, places where they want to invest. They look at your banking system. What are the rules that are there? They look at your insurance system. They look at your fiscal and monetary policies. So these are various units of governance. So when they see all this, they say, yes, this is the right place to go, or no, we can't touch this with a long pole. Those are the roles that corporate governance and even proper governance in any system can play in terms of development.
Quite interesting. Mr. Alimi, what are the challenges, corporate governance faces in Nigeria because you've talked about the
Mm.
benefits and the role it can play in making sure the economy is really improving. And I'm really sold on the issue of the prospects of foreign investment, because foreign investors, you said, will not want to come to a country where things are not done properly or not done right, with global best practices, like so you guys will say. So, what challenges exist as
Yeah.
far as good corporate governance is concerned in Nigeria?
Yeah. Thank you. I think the major challenge now is education. And when I say education, what I mean is that people need to know more. People need to know more. People need to know the rules. People need to know what is expected of them. Especially when you look at a large chunk of the private sector, the SMEs, for example. SMEs in Nigeria, we call them the engine of growth. We have quite a number. We have millions of SMEs. But over the years, we have realized that SMEs only live for sometimes max 5 years. They are gone and under. And most of the time, it is because there's no entrenched best practice in the way the organizations are run. You can't even decipher, you can't distinguish between the organization and the person that started it. And that is one of the things that corporate governance does. It sets the person aside, sets the organization apart, and whether that person is there or not, the company runs. And the organization is also sustainable over the years. So that's one of the major, and that is what IOD is doing. We provide education, we provide even free education sometimes to ensure that we enlighten people. The second, I would say also is, we could talk about the issue of adherence. Sometimes these infractions, I think they are more in our client than other clients.
Okay.
People think they can do things and get away with it. I also think regulation is not as strong as it should be. We can do better, just like I mentioned earlier. Regulation is also a challenge. Then, of course, the fact that the public sector doesn't seem to have a general code that guides whether you are in the parastatals, or you're in the ministry, or you're on the board of a public company. There's no general code that guides set of rules and behavior. But I think gradually we're getting to it, because we are close to getting one now. So,
all right, very interesting. When we come back from a commercial break, I'd like us to talk about political will. Because talk about enforcement of regulations. Please stay with us. For those listening, we'll be right back after this commercial timeout. It's still the morning crossfire on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
This is an infomercial.
Are you a designer? Do you love football? If your answer is yes,
Welcome back. Still the morning crossfire right here, 9.3 Nigeria. My name is Kofi Bartels. We're still talking about corporate governance in Nigeria. And of course, looking at the role of corporate governance in national development, looking at the role of corporate governance in ensuring the Nigerian economy is put sound footing. And of course, we have our guest this morning, the DG, CEO, Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria. Mr. Dele Alimi is with us from about 8 o'clock. He actually joined before 8 o'clock. Before we went on break, Mr. Alimi, we were talking about the challenges that corporate governance faces in Nigeria. And you talked about, education, you talked about regulation, you talked about adherence. But I want you to talk a bit about political will. Do you think this is a problem? Because I have a key point. I mean, we can talk about different aspects of corporate governance. For instance, adherence to financial regulation. Some people I know in the corporate world are very big on adherence to financial regulations. They don't want to cut corners. Very fantastic, very straightforward people who are big on corporate governance. But guess what? The people in government do not want to allow them do the right thing. You said corporate governance is about doing things right. People in government do not want to allow them doing the right thing. Things are as simple as filing their tax returns. They get bombarded with all sorts of things. And I remember one of them told me, I always tell this story, and that, we had a presidential ease of doing business initiative, and something happened with vice president's office where those guys who were working with the vice president were shown the door after the former president got back from his UK trip, and things went back to square zero at the FIRS. One businessman told me that he had to, was forced to try and cut corners. Said, I'm not going to cut. So tell us about this political will. And you think we have it now with Bola Tinubu at the helms?
Thank you very much. That's also a very political question. But let me say this. I think was it in the Bible that it says where there are no rules, there is no crime. That does not mean that we do not have rules guiding our financial transactions in Nigeria. We do have rules. We do have stringent rules. We have public sector codes, rules and things like that are supposed to guide public sector actors. But just like you said, yes, there is a lot of infraction, quite a lot, I must confess. In fact, people in the private sector face a lot of frustration when they try not to comply with such very wrong move from the public sector. I completely agree with you. And I think a critical part of it is the political will, the tone from the top. We call it in corporate governance, we call it tone from the top. Because in corporate governance, we believe that tone will be set by the board of the organization, which is at the topmost part of the organization. And then it goes right down to the last person in the organization. They know what to do and what not to do. It is important that tone is set right at the top, and by saying that, I'm saying, look, tone must be set even by the president himself, that this government is not going to condone any infraction. This government is going to play by the books. This government is going to encourage private sector participation, and this government is going to promote a conducive business environment, no matter who's us, it's God. That is good. I think the right step was taken when that committee on tax reform was put in place, because that was one area of major challenge for the private sector. And I must confess, Mr. Taiwo Dele is doing a wonderful job there.
Yes.
I expect him to do more. The good thing about that committee is not just a committee to establish rules, it's a committee to enforce. So I think that tone from the top, allowing that committee, which is basically private sector led, to also enforce, helps to set the standard and the way and the procedures in that area. And I'm looking forward to the wonderful result from that committee. But be that as it may, my friend, I think what would again help is government supporting the Financial Reporting Council to ensure that that code for the public sector is completed and released on time. In fact, it shouldn't go beyond 2024. When that code is there, it goes beyond the normal, I don't know what they call it, normal civil service rules. And this is a code that will govern transactions.
Yeah, Mr. Lee, I'm so sorry we have run out of time, and I will have to say goodbye to you. I'm so sorry, but you have your annual directors conference coming up 16th to 17th November. So we wish you the very best as we will be monitoring that, and of course we would like to join you at some point over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kofi. I'm very glad.
Are you interested in studying and working in the UK? To apply for an undergraduate, master's, Master of Philosophy, or
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens.